Jake had been planning this moment for 3 months. He knew exactly what he wanted to say, where he wanted to say it, and how he hoped Maya would react. The small velvet box had been burning a hole in his pocket for weeks. Tonight was finally the night they sat at their favorite corner table at Romano's. It's the same Italian restaurant where they'd had their first official date 2 years ago. Maya was telling him about her day at work, completely unaware that Jake's hands were shaking under the table. She looked beautiful in the soft candlelight, her dark hair falling over her shoulders as she laughed at something their waiter had said. Jake barely touched his food. His stomach was doing flips, and he kept checking his watch. He'd planned to wait until dessert, but his nerves were getting the better of him. Finally, he couldn't wait any longer. "Maya," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "There's something I need to ask you." She looked up from her pasta, immediately sensing the change in his tone. "Is everything okay? You've been acting weird all evening?" Jake stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. The other diners didn't seem to notice, but to him, it felt like the entire restaurant had gone silent. He pulled out the small box and got down on one knee right there beside their table. "Maya Rodriguez, you're the most amazing woman I've ever met. You make me laugh every single day. You challenge me to be better. You've shown me what real love feels like." His voice was getting stronger now, more confident. "Will you marry me?" Hands flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment that felt like forever, she just stared at him. Then she nodded frantically. Yes, of course I will." She practically shouted. The entire restaurant erupted in applause. Jake slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, and they both started crying and laughing at the same time. Other customers were taking pictures, the waiters were cheering, and the manager even brought them a free bottle of champagne. They spent the next hour calling friends and taking selfies. But there was one call Maya was most excited to make. Her mother, Rosa, had always been her best friend and closest confidant. Maya couldn't wait to share the news. "Mom, are you sitting down?" Maya said into the phone, practically bouncing in her seat. "What's wrong, Mia? You sound strange," Rosa replied, immediately concerned. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect," Jake just proposed. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Rosa's voice came through, warm but measured. "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful news. I'm so happy for you both." Jake leaned closer to the phone so Rosa could hear him. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I love your daughter more than anything in the world. I promise I'll take good care of her." "I know you will, Jake. You're a good young man," Rosa said. "But before we start planning any weddings, there's something we need to discuss. You know how important family traditions are to us?" Maya's smile faltered slightly. She knew that tone in her mother's voice. "What kind of tradition, Mom?" "Well, in our family, before any marriage can happen, the future husband needs to receive my personal blessing. And that's not something I give lightly." Jake and Maya exchanged glances. They'd been together for 2 years, and Rosa had always been kind. To Jake, she'd invited him to family dinners, asked about his work, and seemed to genuinely like him. What more did she need to know? "Mom, you already know Jake. You've spent time with him at family gatherings." "What exactly do you mean by personal blessing?" Maya asked, a note of worry creeping into her voice. Rosa's voice became more serious. "After what happened with your brother Carlos and his wife, I realized that people can seem perfect during visits and holidays, but marriage is about everyday life. It's about how someone handles stress, responsibility, and family obligations. When no one is watching..." Maya remembered her brother's divorce 3 years ago. It had been messy and painful for everyone involved. Carlos's ex-wife had seemed lovely during their courtship. But after the wedding, it became clear that she wasn't prepared for the realities of being part of a close-knit family. The marriage fell apart within 18 months. "Are you asking for?" Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I want you to come stay with me for 1 full week. Not as a guest, but as part of the family. You'll help me with my daily routines, my volunteer work, and my responsibilities. I need to see how you handle real life, not just the fun parts." Jake's mind was racing. A week living with Maya's mother. He'd always gotten along well with Rosa, but this sounded intense. Maya looked just as surprised as he felt. Mom, that seems a bit much, don't you think? Maya said carefully. Shh. Mia, I watched your father struggle with family responsibilities. For years before he passed away, I saw how it affected our marriage when he couldn't handle the everyday pressures of being part of this family. I don't want you to go through what I went through. Rose's voice softened. I'm not trying to make things difficult. I just want to make sure Jake understands what he's signing up for. Being married to you means being married to all of us. Means understanding our traditions, our values, and our way of life. A week living together will show me if he's really ready for that commitment. Jake looked at Maya, who was chewing her lip nervously. He could see she was torn between supporting her mother and protecting their relationship. This wasn't exactly how he'd imagined their engagement would go. What if I say no? Jake asked quietly. Then you say no, Rosa replied simply. But then you'll have your answer about how serious you are about joining this family. The restaurant suddenly felt very quiet around them. Jake realized this was his first real test as Maya's fiancé, and how he handled it would set the tone for everything that came next. When would this week happen? He asked. As soon as you're ready. But Jake, I want you to understand something. This isn't about me trying to find reasons not to like you. I already care about you. This is about making sure you truly know what you're getting into. Making sure Maya is choosing someone who will be there for her through all of life's challenges, not just the easy parts. Maya reached across the table and took Jake's hand. Her engagement ring caught the light, reminding them both of the promise they'd just made to each other. I need to think about this, Jake said honestly. Of course you do, Rosa replied. Take all the time you need, but remember, mijo, if you're not willing to put in the effort to earn my blessing, then maybe you're not ready for the effort that marriage requires. After they hung up, Jake and Maya sat in silence for several minutes. Their romantic evening had taken an unexpected turn, and they both needed time to process what had just happened. I've never heard of anything like this before, Jake finally said. Neither have I, Maya admitted. But you know my mom. When she makes up her mind about something, that's it. And honestly, after what happened with Carlos, I can understand why she's being extra careful. Jake nodded slowly. He was beginning to realize that marrying Maya meant more than just the two of them. It meant becoming part of something bigger. And Rosa wanted to make sure he was ready for that responsibility. The question was he? Jake spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about Rosa's challenge. He talked to his best friend Danny, who thought the whole thing was crazy. Called his older sister Lisa, who said it sounded like a mother who really cared about her daughter. But in the end, it was Maya who helped him make the decision. Look, I know my mom can be intense, Maya said as they sat on his couch, sharing a pizza. But she's not trying to break us up. She's trying to protect me. After everything that happened with Carlos, she's scared of seeing me get hurt. Jake nodded. He'd heard the stories about Maya's brother's marriage falling apart. Carlos had seemed happy during the engagement. But once the reality of family life set in, everything changed. His wife couldn't handle the close family dynamics, the constant gatherings, and the expectations that came with being part of the Rodriguez family. So you think I should do it? Jake asked. I think you should do what feels right to you, Maya replied. But I'll be honest with you. My mom's blessing means everything to me. If she doesn't approve, it's going to make our marriage really difficult. The next morning, Jake called Rosa. Mrs. Rodriguez, I've made my decision. I want to earn your blessing the right way. When can I move in? Rosa's voice sounded pleased but not surprised. This Sunday. And Jake, bring clothes for work and for getting dirty. This won't be a vacation. Sunday arrived faster than Jake expected. He packed a large suitcase and drove to Rosa's house in the older part of town. The Rodriguez family home was a beautiful 2-story house with a large front porch and an even larger backyard. Jake had been there many times for family gatherings, but it felt different knowing he'd be living there for a week. Rosa opened the door before he could knock. She was a small woman in her early 60s, but she had the energy of someone half her age. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she was wearing gardening clothes. Right on time, she said, hugging him. Come on, I'll show you to your room. Jake followed her upstairs to a small but comfortable guest room. On the nightstand, he found a handwritten schedule that made his eyes widen. 5:30 a.m. morning exercises in the garden, 6:15 a.m., shower and breakfast preparation. 7 a.m. breakfast delivery to Mrs. Chen and Mr. Williams. 8:30 a.m., return home. Clean kitchen. 9 a.m. Grocery shopping, list on refrigerator. 11 a.m. Garden maintenance. 1 p.m., lunch and rest. 2:30 p.m. Volunteer work at community center. 5 p.m. Home repairs checklist and garage. 7 p.m. Dinner preparation. 8:30 p.m. Evening walk around neighborhood. 9:30 p.m. Free time. This is every day? Jake asked, trying not to sound overwhelmed. Monday through Friday? Weekends are a bit different, Rosa replied with a small smile. Don't worry, you'll get used to it. I've been following this routine for 5 years now, ever since your father-in-law passed away. Jake set his suitcase down and looked around the room. It was clear Rosa had put thought into making him comfortable, but this was definitely going to be more challenging than he'd expected. The next morning, Jake's phone alarm went off at 5:15 a.m. He'd always been more of a night person. Getting up this early was rough. He stumbled downstairs to find Rosa already outside, wearing workout clothes and setting up yoga mats in the backyard. Good morning, she called out cheerfully. Ready for some morning stretches? For the next 45 minutes, Rosa led Jake through a series of yoga poses and light exercises. She moved with surprising flexibility for her age, while Jake struggled to keep up. His muscles were already sore, and the day had barely started. After showers, they prepared breakfast together. Rosa showed Jake how to make her special scrambled eggs and fresh orange juice. But this wasn't just for them. They were making extra portions for 2 elderly neighbors who lived alone. Mrs. Chen is 87 and doesn't cook much anymore, Rosa explained, as they packed the food into containers. Mr. Williams lives 3 houses down. His arthritis makes it hard for him to get around, especially in the mornings. Jake carried the warm containers as they walked through the neighborhood. Mrs. Chen answered her door with a huge smile when she saw Rosa. And her face lit up even more when Rosa introduced Jake as Maya's fiancé. Oh, he's so handsome, Mrs. Chen said in her accented English. Maya is a lucky girl. You take good care of her, yes? Yes, ma'am, I will, Jake replied, feeling a warmth he hadn't expected. Mr. Williams was a retired teacher who loved to talk. He kept them at his door for 20 minutes, telling stories about the neighborhood and asking Jake about his job. Rosa listened patiently, never rushing him. Even though Jake could see they had a busy schedule ahead, back at home they cleaned up the breakfast dishes together. Rosa was particular about how things were done. Dishes had to be completely clean, counters wiped down twice, and everything put away in its exact place. My husband used to say I was too picky about the kitchen, Rosa said as she showed Jake the proper way to organize the silverware drawer. But when you're feeding a family, cleanliness matters. Plus, starting the day with a clean kitchen makes everything else feel more manageable. The grocery shopping was an adventure in itself. Rosa had a detailed list written in neat handwriting, but it wasn't just a simple list. Next to each item, she'd written notes about quality, price limits, and specific brands. Tomatoes only if they're deep red and firm. No more than $2 per pound. Bread, whole wheat, soft but not squishy. Check expiration date carefully. Chicken organic if possible, but regular is fine if organic is over $8 per pound. Jake watched Rosa inspect every piece of fruit, check every expiration date, and compare prices on different brands. What he thought would be a 30-minute trip turned into over an hour of careful shopping. This seems like a lot of work for groceries, Jake commented as they loaded the car. It is, Rosa agreed. But when you're managing a household budget and trying to eat healthy, every choice matters. Maya grew up understanding the value of money and good food because I taught her to pay attention to these details. As they drove home, Jake started to understand what Rosa was doing. This wasn't just about testing his patience or work ethic. She was showing him the level of care and attention that went into maintaining the kind of family life Maya was used to. The afternoon brought garden work, which turned out to be more physical than Jake expected. Rosa's backyard was like a small farm, with vegetable beds, fruit trees, and flower gardens that required constant attention. This tomato plant needs staking, Rosa said, handing Jake wooden stakes and garden twine. And these weeds need to come out completely, roots and all. Jake worked in the hot sun, his hands getting dirty and his back starting to ache. Rosa worked beside him, moving with practiced efficiency while explaining the care each plant needed. Maya used to help me with this when she was younger, Rosa said, as they watered the vegetables. She learned that good things take time and effort. You can't just plant something and ignore it. You have to tend to it every day. Jake was beginning to realize that Rosa wasn't just talking about plants. By evening, Jake was exhausted. His muscles ached, his hands were dirty despite multiple washings, and he was ready to collapse on the couch. But Rosa had other plans. "Time for our evening walk," she announced after dinner. "It's good for digestion, and I like to check on the neighborhood." As they walked through the quiet streets, Rosa waved to neighbors working in their yards and stopped to chat with people walking their dogs. Jake noticed how many people knew her name, how they asked about Maya, and how they seemed genuinely happy to see her. "You're like the neighborhood mom," Jake observed. "I suppose I am," Rosa replied. "When you live somewhere for 30 years, people become family. That's something Maya learned growing up here. She understands that community matters, that we take care of each other." Back at home, Jake finally got his first real break of the day. As he sat in the living room, looking at photos of Maya's childhood, he realized this was only day one. He had 6 more days of this schedule ahead of him. But something unexpected was happening. Despite being tired, Jake felt a sense of accomplishment he hadn't expected. The day had been full of purpose, of helping others, of being part of something bigger than himself. Maybe Rosa was onto something after all. Saturday morning arrived with what felt like a nightmare. Jake woke up to Rosa banging pots in the kitchen at 5 a.m., which was unusual since she was normally quiet in the mornings. When he stumbled downstairs, he found her surrounded by lists, looking more stressed than he'd seen her all week. "Jake, we have a problem," Rosa said without looking up. "I forgot that today is the monthly family gathering. Everyone's coming here at 2 p.m., and I'm nowhere near ready." Jake rubbed his eyes. Still trying to wake up? Everyone. My sisters Carmen and Patricia, their husbands, their kids, my cousin Miguel and his family, plus some of the older neighbors who always come. Rosa counted on her fingers, about 25 people total. Jake's stomach dropped. He'd met most of Maya's extended family at various events, but never all at once, and never in a situation where he was supposed to help host them. "What exactly needs to be done?" Jake asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Rosa handed him a list that was 2 pages long. Food preparation, house cleaning, setting up tables and chairs in the backyard, decorating, and a dozen other tasks that seemed impossible to finish in 9 hours. Plus, Rosa added, wincing, as she tried to stretch her still sore back, "I can barely move today. You're going to have to handle most of this yourself." Jake stared at the list, feeling overwhelmed. This was clearly the biggest test yet, and Rosa had planned it perfectly for his last full day. "Okay," Jake said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Let's figure this out." The first disaster happened at 8 a.m. The catering order Rosa had placed was completely wrong. Instead of the traditional Mexican dishes she'd ordered for 25 people, they'd delivered Chinese food for 10 people. "This isn't what I ordered at all," Rosa said into the phone, her voice getting higher with stress. "The family gathering is in 6 hours. The catering company was apologetic but couldn't fix the order until Monday." Rosa hung up the phone and looked like she might cry. "It's okay. We'll figure something else out," Jake said, though he had no idea how they were going to feed 25 people with 6 hours' notice. "Jake, you don't understand. This family has been gathering here every month for 15 years. Patricia always brings her famous salsa. Carmen makes her special rice, but I'm supposed to provide the main dishes. If I can't even do that, ... Rosa trailed off, looking defeated. Jake had never seen Rosa look so vulnerable. For the first time all week, she seemed less like the strong, organized woman he'd been trying to impress, and more like someone who was genuinely worried about disappointing her family. "What if we cooked everything ourselves?" Jake suggested. Rosa looked at him like he was crazy. "Do you know how much food that is? We'd need to make enough rice and beans for 25 people, plus meat plus sides. That's impossible."
Ow, maybe.
"Not," Jake said, thinking fast. What if we called some of the family members and asked them to bring extra dishes? And we could focus on making just 2 or 3 things really well instead of trying to do everything. Rosa hesitated. I hate asking for help. People expect me to have everything under control, but they're family, right? They'd want to help. Reluctantly, Rosa started making phone calls. To Jake's relief, everyone was happy to contribute extra food. Carmen offered to make double portions of her rice and bring additional vegetables. Patricia said she could stop by the grocery store and pick up ingredients for a quick salad. Miguel's wife volunteered to bring desserts. With the food crisis somewhat solved, Jake tackled the house cleaning while Rosa supervised from the couch. But at 11 a.m., the next disaster struck. Rosa's back went out completely, and she couldn't get up without help. I can't host a party like this, Rosa said, tears of frustration in her eyes. Everyone's going to think I'm falling apart. Jake helped Rosa to her bedroom and got her settled with ice packs and pain medication. Then he stood in the living room. Looking around at everything that still needed to be done, he felt completely overwhelmed. Tables and chairs needed to be set up outside. The house needed to be cleaned. Food still needed to be prepared. Decorations needed to be hung. And in less than 3 hours, 25 people would be arriving, expecting everything to be perfect. That's when Jake finally reached his breaking point. This is impossible, he said, louder than he'd intended. I can't do all of this by myself. I'm not a professional party planner. I'm not a chef, and I'm definitely not you. Rosa looked up from her bed, surprised by his outburst. You want to test me? Fine, I get it. But setting me up to fail in front of your entire family isn't testing my character. It's just cruel. Jake was pacing now, his frustration pouring out. I've spent this whole week trying to prove I'm good enough for Maya, but nothing I do seems to be enough. I help your neighbors. I work in your garden. I take care of kids. I handle emergencies. And now you want me to single-handedly host a party for 25 people while you're bedridden? Jake stopped pacing and looked directly at Rosa. I love Maya more than anything in the world, but I'm starting to think that no man would ever be good enough for your standards. Maybe that's why Carlos's marriage fell apart. Maybe it wasn't about him not being able to handle family life. Maybe it was about never being able to live up to impossible expectations. The room went quiet. Rosa stared at Jake for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she patted the edge of the bed. Sit down, Jake. Jake sat, still breathing hard from his outburst. He immediately felt bad for yelling at Rosa while she was in pain, but he couldn't take the words back. Now, you're right, Rosa said quietly. I've been testing you all week, but not in the way you think. Jake looked at her, confused. I wasn't testing whether you could do everything perfectly. I was testing whether you would try, whether you would care enough to put in effort, and whether you would stick around when things got difficult. Rosa adjusted her ice pack and winced. But most importantly, I was testing whether you would eventually stand up for yourself and for Maya. What do you mean, Jake? My husband was a wonderful man, but he never learned to set boundaries with family. He said yes to everything, tried to please everyone, and eventually wore himself out, trying to be perfect. It put a huge strain on our marriage. Rosa's voice got softer. I didn't want Maya to marry someone who would just go along with everything, without ever speaking up for what he believed was right. Jake felt his anger dissolving into confusion. So you wanted me to get frustrated? I wanted to see what you would do when you reached your limit? Would you just give up? Would you blame other people? Or would you stand up and say when something wasn't fair? Rosa smiled slightly. It took you 6 days, but you finally told me when I was asking too much. Jake realized that Rosa had been playing a much deeper game than he'd understood. This wasn't just about proving he could handle daily responsibilities. It was about proving he had the strength to protect his relationship with Maya when necessary. But what about the party? Everyone's still coming, and we're nowhere near ready. Rosa reached for her phone. Family gathering is canceled due to my back injury. We'll reschedule for next month. Just like that? Just like that. Jake, the party was never the real test. The real test was seeing how you'd react when I asked you to do something that was genuinely unreasonable. Rosa looked at him seriously. Maya needs a partner who will work hard for the family, but who will also protect her from people who ask too much, even if those people are family. Jake sat quietly, processing everything Rosa had just told him. He realized that his angry outburst hadn't ruined his chances of getting Rosa's blessing. It had actually been the key to earning it. So what happens now? Now you help me call everyone to cancel the party, and then we sit on the back porch and have an honest conversation about what it really means to be part of this family. Rosa struggled to sit up straighter. Because Jake, you've already proven everything I needed to see. The question now is whether you still want to marry my daughter after spending a week with her crazy mother. Despite everything, Jake started laughing. I definitely still want to marry her. Good, Rosa said, smiling for the first time. All day because she's been worried sick all week that I was going to scare you away. Jake realized that Maya had been just as nervous about this test as he had been. Tomorrow, he'd finally get to see her again and tell her about the strangest, most challenging, and most educational week of his life. Sunday morning felt different. For the first time all week, Jake woke up naturally instead of to an alarm. Rosa had told him the night before that his final day was his to choose how to spend. No schedule, no tasks, no tests. Just whatever felt right to him. Jake found Rosa in the kitchen, moving slowly but looking much better than she had the day before. She was making coffee and had set out ingredients for a simple breakfast. How's your back feeling? Jake asked, genuinely concerned. Much better, thank you. Sometimes I just need to slow down and let my body rest. Rosa handed him a cup of coffee. So, what would you like to do today? You've earned a day off. Jake thought about it. He could sleep in, watch TV, or just relax after the most intense week of his life. But something else was calling to him. Actually, I'd like to look through some of Maya's old photo albums, if that's okay. I want to learn more about her childhood. Rosa's face lit up with surprise and pleasure. Really, that's what you want to do? Yeah. I realized this week that there's so much about Maya's life I don't know. I mean, I know she grew up here, but I don't really understand what that meant for her. What shaped her into the person she is today? Rosa led him to the living room, where she pulled out several thick photo albums from a cabinet. These go all the way back to when Maya was born. Fair warning, I took a lot of pictures. They spent the next 3 hours going through albums together. Rosa told stories about each stage of Maya's life, from her first steps in the backyard garden to her high school graduation in the living room they were sitting in. She was always helping in the kitchen, Rosa said, pointing to a picture of 8-year-old Maya standing on a stool, stirring something in a large pot. Even when she was little, she wanted to take care of everyone else. Jake studied the photo. She still does that. She's always making sure everyone else is comfortable before she thinks about herself. Exactly. But sometimes that means she doesn't speak up when she needs something. Rosa turned the page to show teenage Maya at various family gatherings. She learned to be the peacekeeper in the family. When there were arguments or tensions, Maya would find ways to smooth things over. Jake nodded, recognizing this trait-in. His fiancée, she does that with us too. If I'm stressed about work, she'll change the subject, or suggest we do something fun instead of talking about what's bothering me. That's why she needs someone who will pay attention to what she's not saying, not just what she is saying. Rosa looked at Jake seriously. Maya will take care of everyone else first, so her partner needs to make sure she's being taken care of too. As they continued through the albums, Jake began to see patterns in Maya's life. It was always in the background of family photos, making sure everyone else was included. In school pictures, she was often helping younger children or organizing group activities. Even in casual snapshots, she was usually doing something for someone else. She's never learned to put herself first, has she? Jake observed. Really? It's one of her best qualities, but it's also one of my biggest worries about her. Rosa closed one album and opened another. I need to know that whoever marries her will notice when she's sacrificing too much of herself for others. They came to a section of photos from Maya's early 20s, and Jake noticed a change. Maya looked less happy in these pictures, more stressed and tired. This was when she was dating that boy Trevor, Rosa explained. He was charming and fun, but he never noticed when Maya was struggling. She worked 2 jobs to help pay for his school, gave up her own plans to support his dreams, and he never even realized she was doing it. Jake felt a pang of recognition. I don't want to be like that. I don't think you are, this week showed. Me that you pay attention to what people need, even when they don't ask for help. Rosa pointed to a more recent photo of Maya at a family gathering, looking relaxed and genuinely happy. This was taken a few months after she started dating you. See the difference? Jake could see it. Maya looked lighter, more at ease. What changed, you did? You made her feel like she could relax, like she didn't have to take care of everyone all the time. Rosa smiled at him. That's when I knew you might be the right person for her. Felt a warmth spread through his chest. So why put me through this whole week if you already approved of me? Because liking someone and trusting them to be a good husband are two different things. I needed to see if you understood what marriage really involves. Rosa closed the photo album and looked at Jake directly. It's not just about the romantic parts. It's about showing up every day, taking care of family, handling problems together, and being there when things get difficult. And you think I can do that? Jake, this week you helped elderly neighbors, managed household responsibilities, dealt with emergencies, took care of children, and stood up for yourself when I pushed too hard. Most importantly, you did it all without complaining and without losing sight of why you were doing it. Rosa reached over and patted his hand. You proved that you understand what it means to be part of a family. Jake felt tears in his eyes. Does this mean I have your blessing? You've had my blessing since Wednesday, when I watched you calm down Mr. Garcia at his doctor's appointment. Everything after that was just making sure you knew what you were signing up for. Before Jake could respond, they heard a car in the driveway. Rosa smiled mysteriously. Now that'd be Maya. I called her this morning and told her to come over. Jake's heart started racing. He hadn't seen Maya all week, and suddenly he was nervous. What if the week had changed how he felt about their relationship? What if Rosa told Maya about his breakdown yesterday? Maya came through the front door looking anxious and hopeful at the same time. When she saw Jake sitting with her mother, surrounded by photo albums, her face relaxed into a smile. How did it go? She asked, sitting down next to Jake and taking his hand. It went well, Rosa said before. Jake could answer. Very well, actually. Maya looked between them, trying to read their expressions. Really? You're both being too calm? I was expecting drama. Jake laughed. Oh, there was drama. Your mom put me through the ringer. But I think I understand now why she did it. Rosa stood up slowly, her back still bothering her. Maya, Jake has my complete blessing to marry you. But more than that, I'm confident that he's going to be a wonderful husband and a great addition to our family. Maya's eyes filled with tears. Really? You're sure? I'm sure. He's patient, hardworking, caring, and strong enough to stand up for what's right. Plus, he actually wants to understand our family traditions instead of just tolerating them. Rosa smiled at both of them. I couldn't ask for a better son-in-law. Maya threw her arms around Jake, and they both started crying and laughing at the same time. Jake realized that Rosa's blessing meant more to him now than it had a week ago, because he understood what it represented. There's one more thing, Rosa said, pulling out a small wrapped box. This was your grandfather's wedding ring, Maya. I've been saving it for when you found the right person. Maya opened the box to reveal a simple gold band that looked well-worn and well-loved. Abuelo's ring? You would have liked Jake. They're both the kind of men who show love through actions, not just words. Rosa looked at Jake. If you want to, use it for the wedding. It would make me very happy. Jake took the ring and slipped it onto his finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for him. 6 months later, at their wedding reception, Rosa stood up to give a toast. She looked at Jake and Maya, surrounded by all the family and friends who had become so important to Jake over the past months. I want to tell you all about the week Jake spent with me before I gave him my blessing to marry Maya, Rosa began, and Jake felt his stomach drop. But as Rosa continued, he realized she wasn't going to embarrass him. Jake showed me that he understood something very important. Marriage isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who will work hard to build a life together. Someone who will show up every day, take care of family, and love you through all the ordinary moments, not just the special ones. Rosa raised her glass. Jake, thank you for showing me that Maya chose someone who will love her the way she deserves to be loved. And Maya, thank you for choosing someone who understands that joining our family means joining something bigger than just the two of you. As everyone raised their glasses, Jake caught Rosa's eye and mouthed, "Thank you." She had given him something. More valuable than her blessing, she had given him the knowledge and confidence to be the husband Maya deserved. And as he looked at his new wife, surrounded by the family that had become his family, Jake realized that Rosa's week of tests had been the best wedding gift he could have received. By Wednesday morning, Jake thought he was getting the hang of Rose's routine. He woke up before his alarm. His muscles were adjusting to the physical work. And he'd even started enjoying the morning walks with the neighborhood dogs following them around. But Rosa had other plans. "Jake, I have a small problem today," Rosa said over breakfast, though her tone suggested it wasn't really that small. "I accidentally scheduled 2 important things at the same time this afternoon." Looked up from his eggs. "What kind of things?" "Well, Mrs. Patterson needs help moving some furniture in her apartment. She's 83 and just got out of the hospital. Her daughter lives in another state and can't help her." Rosa paused, buttering her toast slowly. "But I also promised to take Mr. Garcia to his doctor's appointment. He doesn't drive anymore. And this is an important checkup for his heart condition." Jake waited for Rosa to explain how they'd handle both situations, but she just kept eating her breakfast calmly. Double quotes, so. Dot. "What do we do?" Jake asked finally. "We?" Rosa raised an eyebrow. "I think you mean what do you do? I can only be in one place at a time, so you'll need to decide which person needs help more urgently." Jake's stomach dropped. It felt like a test, and he wasn't sure what the right answer was. How was he supposed to choose between helping an elderly woman move furniture and getting a man to an important medical appointment? "Can't we reschedule one of them?" Jake asked. "Mrs. Patterson's daughter is paying the movers to come today. We don't help her sort through what needs to go and what needs to stay. She'll have to pay them to wait around, which she can't afford." Rosa took a sip of her coffee. "And Mr. Garcia's appointment took 3 weeks to get. If he misses it, he might not get another one for months." Jake realized this was exactly the kind of real-life situation Rosa had been talking about. There wasn't a perfect solution, just difficult choices that needed to be made. "I'll take Mr. Garcia to his appointment," Jake said after thinking it through. Health comes first, and he really can't handle that on his own. Rosa nodded approvingly. "Good choice. I'll help Mrs. Patterson with the furniture." "But Jake, you should know that Mr. Garcia doesn't speak much English, and he gets anxious in medical situations. You'll need to be patient with him." The afternoon turned out to be more challenging than Jake expected. Mr. Garcia was a sweet man, in his 70s, but he was clearly nervous about his appointment. He spoke rapid Spanish when he was worried, and Jake's high school Spanish wasn't good enough to follow everything he was saying at the doctor's office. Jake had to help Mr. Garcia fill out forms, translate questions from the nurse, and sit with him during the long wait. When Mr. Garcia's blood pressure reading came back high, he started to panic, speaking faster in Spanish and gripping Jake's arm. "It's okay, Mr. Garcia, Esteban," Jake said, using one of the few Spanish phrases he knew well. He stayed calm. Even though he could see how scared the older man was, the doctor explained that Mr. Garcia's blood pressure was elevated, probably due to stress about the appointment itself, which was normal. Jake helped translate this news, watched Mr. Garcia's whole body relax with relief. On the drive home, Mr. Garcia patted Jake's shoulder and said something in Spanish that Jake didn't understand, but the grateful tone was clear. When they got back to Rosa's house, Mr. Garcia hugged Jake like family before walking to his own home next door. "How did it go?" Rosa asked when Jake came inside. "Good, I think." He was really scared, but the appointment went well. Jake sat down heavily in the kitchen chair. "I felt bad that I couldn't understand everything he was saying." "The important thing is that you stayed with him and kept him calm," Rosa said. "Mr. Garcia told me later that you were very kind and patient. That matters more than perfect Spanish." Jake realized Rosa had already talked to Mr. Garcia, which meant she'd probably been testing how he'd handled the situation. But instead of feeling manipulated, felt oddly proud that he'd apparently passed. Thursday brought a different kind of challenge. Rosa's sister Carmen called in the morning, announcing that she was bringing her 3 grandchildren over for the afternoon because of a family emergency. They're good kids, Rosa assured Jake as they quickly cleaned the house. But they're energetic, ages 6, 9, and 12. When Carmen arrived with the children, Jake's quiet week suddenly became very loud. The youngest, Sofia, was shy and clingy. The middle child, Diego, was full of questions about everything. And the oldest, Isabella, was clearly not happy about being dropped off at her great-aunt's house. "I wanted to stay home and video chat with my friends," Isabella complained. Slumping on the couch with her arms crossed, Rosa put Jake in charge of keeping the kids entertained while she prepared snacks. This was definitely not something he'd expected to deal with during his test week. "So, what do you guys like to do for fun?" Jake asked, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Play video games," Diego said immediately. "My mom doesn't let me play video games here," Isabella added with an eye roll. Jake looked around Rosa's living room, which was definitely more suited for adult activities than entertaining children. Then he remembered the large backyard.
Ow!
"About we go outside? I could show you the garden where your tia Rosa and I have been working." To his surprise, this actually got their attention. Diego was fascinated by the tomato plants and wanted to know how they grew. Sophia warmed up when Jake let her help water the flowers. Even Isabella got interested when Jake showed them how to identify ripe vegetables. "Can we pick some stuff for dinner?" Sophia asked shyly. "Sure, but we have to ask your tea letters. Rosa first," Jake replied. They spent the next 2 hours in the garden, with Jake answering endless questions about plants, bugs, and why some vegetables grow underground while others grow on vines. He found himself enjoying their curiosity and energy. When Rosa came outside to check on them, she found all 3 kids dirty and happy, with Jake in the middle showing them how to properly pick cherry tomatoes. "Look, Tia Rosa, Jake taught us which ones are ready," Diego called out, holding up a handful of red tomatoes. Rosa smiled at Jake over the children's heads, and he knew he'd handled this unexpected situation well. That evening, after Carmen picked up the kids, Rosa and Jake sat on the back porch drinking iced tea. "You're good with children," Rosa observed. "I was terrified at first," Jake admitted. "I don't have much experience with kids, but you figured it out. You kept them engaged and happy, and you made them feel important by teaching them something." New Rosa rocked slowly in her chair. "Maya wants children someday. It's good to know you won't panic when that time comes." Jake felt a warmth spread through his chest. He'd never really thought seriously about having kids with Maya, but seeing Rosa's approval made him realize it was probably inevitable in their future. Friday brought the biggest test yet. Rosa woke up with severe back pain and could barely get out of bed. "I'm sorry, Jake," she said, clearly frustrated with herself. "My back goes out sometimes. I'm going to need help with everything today." Jake helped Rosa to the kitchen and got her settled with ice packs and pain medication. Then he looked at the daily schedule and realized he was going to have to handle everything himself. The morning meal deliveries, the grocery shopping, the volunteer work at the community center. It was all on him now, and he couldn't call Maya for help because Rosa had made it clear this week was about him proving he could handle family responsibilities independently. Jake took a deep breath and got to work. He prepared breakfast for Mrs. Chen and Mr. Williams, though his scrambled eggs weren't quite as fluffy as Rosa's. He managed the grocery shopping, though it took him twice as long to find everything on the list. The hardest part was the afternoon volunteer work. Rosa usually helped serve lunch at the community center for seniors, and Jake had to take her place. He'd never done anything like this before, but the other volunteers were patient with him. "You're Rosa's boy, right?" asked Margaret, an elderly volunteer. "She talks about you and Maya all the time." Jake realized that Rosa had been telling people about him all week, which meant she'd been watching his progress more carefully than he'd realized. By evening, Jake was exhausted but proud. He'd kept all of Rosa's commitments, taken care of her needs, and managed the household without any major disasters. "You did well today," Rosa said, as Jake brought her dinner in bed. "Taking care of family when they need help isn't always convenient, but it's what we do." Jake nodded, understanding that this had been another test. Rosa was showing him that marriage meant being there for each other through sickness and health. Just like the wedding vows said, as he fell asleep that night, Jake realized he only had 2 more days left. But instead of counting down the time until he could leave, he found himself wondering what other lessons Rosa had in S.